Get out the insurance cards, get out the co-pays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
Special off-season edition of the One and Done Show. My name is Eric Romoff. You can catch me on Twitter at FantasyNav. We are here trying to help you keep tabs on and make sense of all of the portal pandemonium happening in the offseason of this year's NCAA men's environment. And with that, none other than the best in the business to do just that, our guy, our captain of our ship, Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, how's it going today? Are you thinking about expanding your big board to 150, 200? Tell us a bit about all the player movement out there.
Yeah, so initially, we were going top 50, and then it just kept growing and growing and growing, and the quality of players just kept adding up here. So we moved up to 60, and then I just said, you know what, it just makes sense to do a top 100 here. So it feels there's about 75 to 100 players that could really make an impact with, like a top 20 here that can be a significant impact. So a lot of work these last few days, but the portal closed here on May 1st. We're going to have a few more trickle in as the schools have a 48-hour window to get these kids into the portal. So definitely a lot of things going on here, a lot of fast-paced stuff going on, so much news flying all over the place here. So it's kind of my pleasure. We got another special guest with us today. He's closing in on his 11th year with the Columbus Dispatch, entering his 8th season as the Ohio State men's basketball beat writer. It's Mr. Adam Jardy. Welcome in, Adam. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Mike laid out your bona fides there. Certainly have been spending a lot of time around and near this program. So really excited to hear from your point of view about all the things going on around the Buckeyes this offseason. I mean, first and foremost, the two top scorers for this team, E.J. Liddell, Malachi Branham, are both off to the draft. We'll see what their prospects look like in the NBA. So with that being the case, I mean, how important was it for Coach Holdman to be able to land a premium scorer like Tanner Holden?
Yeah, that's a significant that was a significant point for them as they went into the offseason, trying to find some guys that can step in and can replace some of the production that Ohio State will lose. I did the math for a pretty in-depth story about what the roster currently looks like. And Ohio State will be losing 85.9% of its points from last season and 83.6% of its minutes played. So, I mean, it's a pretty significant roster turnover from last season. And some of that is just that it was an older roster. You had a bunch of 5th and 6th year guys, and you kind of saw that around college basketball with the extra year afforded everybody because of COVID. It was an older roster. But then, yeah, when you lose an E.J. Liddell and then you lose a Malachi Branham, who you had sort of expected would maybe be a 2-year player until about midseason when it became clear he was playing his way into the stratosphere. Then it became evident at that point that they were going to have to go out and find some guys who could come in and be ready to contribute right away. And that's what they expect from a guy like Tanner Holden.
Yeah, so for me, I love Holden's game. I think everybody saw him, in that play-in game, really good into the year there at Wright State. But also you've got Sean McNeil coming in from West Virginia. Being a big UT supporter, saw a lot of him, with West Virginia, a really good knockdown shooter here, a lot of experience in the Big 12. So for me, just kind of looking at these guys coming in, we see the tempo last year at 289th in the country. With these two guys coming in, having played at a faster tempo, you think that's something that essentially Chris Holtman's going to have to adjust to, or how do you see that kind of shaking out? Are they going to want to play a little more up and down this year?
I think if they would like to, or if they can, I think they would like to. I think it remains to be seen whether that will be the case. This is going to be a completely rebuilt backcourt, basically. And so it's at this moment, it's hard for me to really pin down what I think this team's going to look like next year, or what the style of play is going to look like. In addition to all the roster turnover, they are also replacing 2 assistant coaches. Ryan Peden went on to be a head coach at Illinois State, and Tony Skinn went on to be an assistant at Maryland, where he's from. So you've got new blood on the sideline, both on the bench and with the coaching staff. So I think that in an ideal world, yes, you want to push the ball, you want to get easy buckets when you can. I think it helps that when you have a guy like Tanner Holden, who is pretty good at getting to the line, pretty good at getting to the rim. That certainly lets you, that gives you some optimism that maybe you can play a little bit faster and try to get him into some space. And certainly if you can add a guy who for the last 2 seasons has averaged, I think, exactly 12.2 points per game and playing at the high major level, like that translates. Scoring 12 a game in the Big 12 is going to translate to scoring 12 a game in the Big 10. So it's certainly, when you have a few more offensive options, I think it gives you some optimism that it might be a faster paced team than what we saw last season.
That makes sense. Can you kind of tell us maybe about the process that unfolded with Holden and McNeil? Did they want to be Buckeyes from the beginning? I mean, how did this all kind of play out to where they're now going to be wearing the silver? Is it Scarlet?
Scarlet, yep, Scarlet and Gray. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Holden, both of these guys, honestly, I think their backstories are fascinating. I mean, Holden was out of high school. He was getting some interest in playing football at the collegiate level, and then ultimately decided to stick with basketball. His dad played at Marshall. He's got a lot of really talented basketball players in his family, and just kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. By the time he fully committed to basketball, a lot of the high major schools were kind of moved on, and so he ends up at Wright State and is exceptional there, and takes the state, captures the attention of the country with the way that he played in the NCAA tournament, and that opens an opportunity to where now he can go play at Ohio State, a school that he said he grew up rooting for and grew up paying attention to. He's from Ohio, really South Ohio, but he is from Ohio, and so playing for the Buckeyes means something to him. So that was there's some neat stuff there. I think it's a fascinating story to go from essentially unrecruited at the D1 level out of high school to now getting a chance to transfer, be a top 50, top 60 transfer, depending on who you look at, and be a significant impact player at the home state school. So I think that's a really interesting development. I'm really excited to see how his ability translates, taking it up from the mid-major to the high major level. And then Sean McNeil is a kid that, I shouldn't say kid. These guys aren't kids anymore. They're all, we're talking high school or college guys that are in their going 5, 6, 7 years these days. But he took a gap year out of high school, went to a school and didn't like the fit, and ended up taking a year out or a year off and just working out on his own and continuing the schoolwork, and then played a JUCO year at Dayton, and then ends up at West Virginia. So he's got some experience behind him. He's been through it. He's seen some things. He's played at the highest level. And it's a fascinating journey. I mean, I don't know too many guys that can play at a high level for Bob Huggins and score the way that he did and do the things that he did at West Virginia. And they were essentially not even recruited out of high school. Like, it's just to me, it's a testament of like hard work and perseverance and betting on yourself when, you go a year out of high school without even playing. And now we're talking about him coming to Ohio State to play a major role on a team that really, really wants to make the Sweet 16. It's a heck of a journey.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And in the case of Holden, I mean, you always love to see a homecoming story like that. And yeah. I was actually unaware that he had a bit of football interest when he was being recruited. So definitely interesting points to learn there. And speaking of recruiting classes, this 2022 class is going to play a huge role for this team this season, right? You've got 5 high school players that are all set to join the fold. Maybe among those incoming recruits, is there a player or two that you think will have an immediate impact for the Buckeyes?
Honestly, I think 3 of them will play significant roles. I think 4 of them will be at least rotation players this season. I think right now, Bruce Thornton, the point guard out of Georgia, is probably the odds-on favorite to start, and they are really high on him. They think, they got him to commit early. They recruited him hard. They identified him early. They really think he is a cornerstone to build around here for these next couple of years. So I think you'll see a lot of him right off the bat. You don't necessarily want to turn the reins over to a freshman running the point right off the bat, but that's kind of where Ohio State finds itself at this point. So I think you see a lot of him. A guy that is really intriguing to me is Bryce Sensabaugh, who's a power forward, I suppose, but a kid that basically wasn't even ranked a year ago. Missed his junior season. It was a COVID year, but he also had an injury and just kind of spent the year getting better and just really flew under the radar. And Ohio State identified him late this summer and got a pretty quick commitment. And he's, depending on who you look at, some recruiting services rate him as the top kid in this class. I think he's a dude that can get buckets. I think he's going to make an immediate impact right away, which is wild for a guy who a year ago, like I said, didn't appear in anybody's recruiting rankings. Then you have a guy like Roddy Gale, who is sort of a combo guard / wing who can score at a high level, and I think fans are really going to like his game. I think those three guys all play significant immediate roles. I think Felix Opara, who's a center, he's going to play behind Zedkey, who's going into his third season. But Opara will play. I don't expect him to play 25 minutes a game, but he's going to be part of that rotation. He's going to give them some defensive presence, and he's going to be a rim protector and just give them a different dimension at center like they haven't really had in a while.
Yeah, no, it seems like a very important year for obviously some of these guys to come up to obviously have a chance here at the Big Ten. So for me, when I'm looking at this roster, right, I mean, you mentioned Bruce Thornton. For me, it seems like he's really the only point guard really on the roster. There's some other guys can kind of handle the ball. You wrote a piece for the Columbus Dispatch just kind of talking about maybe this last roster spot being for a big man. I mean, will ball handling duties be by committee, or how do you see this shaking out? Are they gonna put the ball in the kid's hands and just see what happens?
I mean, I think you'll see a lot of Bruce Thornton. I think that's kind of where this all starts. And then I think the fascinating thing to me is just like the different types of versatility that are on this roster. I mean, I think Ohio State last season, for as tough as it went down the stretch and for obviously not making it into the Sweet 16, this was a team that I think if it had a healthy Justice Sueing, I think it probably, I don't want to say it definitely wins the Big Ten, but it is certainly like 1A, 1B right up there at the top of the standings. And I think that it is a team that is going to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. He was that important to their plans, and they lost him like right as the season started. He's a forward by trade, but we saw during his first season at Ohio State that when they had injuries, he stepped into the void and ran the point for them. And he's big, he's athletic, he can get to the rim, he's elite at drawing fouls, drawing contact, scoring through contact. And if you have him running the point, it really gives you a whole different dimension with his size and his versatility. So I think right now you're looking at a situation where it's probably Bruce Thornton and Justice Sueing is your primary options. You've got other guys that can handle the ball in a pinch. Like I think you could see Sean McNeil play a couple of minutes at the point. I think you can see some other guys help out where you maybe have three guards on the court and none of them is quote unquote the true point guard, but each of them, maybe it's a little bit by committee. I do think with that final roster spot, yeah, they want to add another big. They want some more size down low, someone else who can fit into the rotation there. I think ideally they'd like to find one of those sort of rare point forwards. If you find someone who can, even more so of a Justice Sueing, like someone who can bang down low and do those things, but can also handle the ball. And I know there are some of those options out there. There's not a ton, but I think that would to even hammer it down a little bit further. That's exactly what they would like to find with that last roster spot.
Yeah, so you actually teed us up perfectly, right? We were curious to know. We've got forward Justice Sueing missed almost the entire year with injury. So maybe expand on what you see his impact being in this season to come.
Well, he's going to be the guy, like just straight up. He'll be the focal point of this team. I think a lot of what they want to do will go through him, whether that's him initiating the offense, whether that's him playing on the wing or playing occasionally on the block. Like he's going to be a major component of what this team looks like this season. He's a high level player. And I think when you look at like last season, if you go down and we're looking at preseason all conference players, like EJ Liddell for Ohio State was a clear first round first league all Big Ten player. But Justice Sueing was like right on that like third team range. And he was the only other Ohio State player in the preseason that even got any conversation for being an all league type of player. I think he's immediately, when healthy, like he's supposed to be. I think he's a top 20 Big Ten player, maybe a top 15 Big Ten player. And I think he's the guy you build around. So how that ultimately shakes out, whether it's primarily on the wing, whether it's more at the point, I think we'll see. But getting his commitment, getting him to come back for one more year and be fully healthy, I don't think I can overstate how important it was to this team's chances for success this season.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. He's a pretty solid player that you could bring back here with this crop of new incoming talent that you have. So definitely an interesting roster.
Yeah.
One of the big things we've been talking about all year is NIL. I'm almost kind of tired of talking about NIL. It seems like every time you pull up, there's some other story, whether it's college football, college basketball. How has this affected Ohio State and the program with the men's basketball team? Can you give us any insight as to how they're kind of navigating the waters here?
Well, I mean, I think like a lot of teams, they're still kind of trying to figure it out. I mean, Ohio State has a collective called The Collective, I believe, or the something. It's all caps with the THE, and they have been involved to an extent. I mean, like shortly after Tanner Holden announced his commitment, the collective announced that he was part. That was part of the deal, and he would be doing charity work and things like that as part of him signing with Ohio State. So it's certainly something that is out there and is being talked about, and they're navigating as best they can. I mean, they were one of the 3 finalists for Nigel Pack, who obviously went to Miami for a pretty eye-opening deal. And that's what there's nothing, as I'm sure you guys had probably talked about, and as you guys know, there's nothing illegal with that. That's how these things are working now. And so I think it's a new landscape that everyone's still trying to figure out the best way to navigate, and all the gray areas that come with that, because technically it's not, NIL is not allowed to be a recruiting inducement. Like that's the letter of the law, but there's no world where NIL is not a recruiting inducement. So the NCAA has really set up every school to fail by putting these weird rules in. So I don't know what this ultimately looks like. But I think Ohio State's navigating as best as anybody is right now, and just trying to figure out what they can and can't do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And now, at least personally, I've got a much better handle of the kind of the state of the state with this team, and how the coach is potentially going to deploy these pieces. Are there any other sort of transfers that to be considering Ohio State, or any other kind of curveballs that might be coming in the days or weeks to follow?
I mean, nothing too crazy at this point. I mean, I think aside from that final, piece that they're trying to add, that one more guy they still want to get through the portal, I think, this roster is essentially set. And so you can start now, I think, you can start to penciling in some ideas on what a rotation looks like, what a lineup looks like. I mean, I think, you start, like I said, Justice Suing and Zed Key. I think those guys are in ink. They're in the starting lineup. And then, then it gets really interesting from there. And I don't know ultimately who that final addition is going to be, but I do think it's worth pointing out that it seems like they've gone for impact guys in the transfer portal this year. Mm-hmm. And that's not to disparage any of the guys that Ohio State has brought in the portal in the last couple of years, but by and large, it's been sort of depth pieces. And these are 2 guys that I think are mid to front of the line rotation type of players who are going to play significant minutes and are going to be counted on at a higher level than I think Ohio State has had to the last couple of years as far as bringing in transfers. And that's important. I mean, like I said earlier, when you lose a Malachi Branham after 1 year, and the expectation, I mean, we knew he was talented, and by about I would say as like camp started to get underway in the fall, there was a little bit of a sense that, hey, this kid's further along than we thought. Like he might, he's not going to be a 4-year. Nobody thought he was going to be a 4-year player, maybe a 3-year player, but it's kind of like, he might be a 2-year guy. And then he just blew up as January went into February. And so that's the kind of thing that in the past would just submarine you, when you have a one and done that you don't expect. But I think the fact that you can go out in the portal and address that kind of, loss right away, that certainly works to Ohio State's benefit in this case. And so I think the roster in a lot of ways seems pretty set right now. And I think it's going to be really fun to start, tinkering with what these combinations might look like and everything like that. But still one more piece to go. And that could obviously throw everything off. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. To round us out here, we are coming off of a season where these Buckeyes finished 5th in the Big Ten. They entered the tournament as a 7 seed after what feels like kind of an arms race of an offseason. You put it perfectly. Do you think this is the year where the Buckeyes ultimately win the Big Ten and make a deeper run in the tournament, or what's your thought for the season to come?
I think there's a chance this is the year that they put a little bit of a deeper run together in the tournament. I mean, it's a team that has had an extremely prolific offense the last several years, extremely efficient, but the defense has really, really struggled. And I feel like if you're able to hold on to some of those offensive principles and add some more legitimate scorers like they have, even though I have so many questions about who plays where and what some of these roles look like, I expect them to score because history has told us that under Chris Holtmann at Ohio State, it's a top 15, top 10, sometimes top 5 offense. I'm interested to see with the new additions on the coaching staff, does that mean defensive philosophies change? Does that bring some more buy-in at that end? And if that is the case, what does that mean for postseason? I don't know that Ohio State, as we sit here right now, aside from Justice Suing, I don't know that there's anybody on this team that's necessarily even in the conversation for like a first team preseason All Big Ten. And I think you need a couple of those guys to really challenge for a league championship. I think Ohio State could develop some of those guys by the end of the season. And if they're able to stay healthy, I think they will. But right now, I don't have them as like a Big Ten favorite. I think that capability is there. And I also think the capability is there to put together a tournament run. And as we know, a lot of that comes down to matchups and all those things that make the tournament that glorious event that we all love so much. But it's hard to project that we're out of April. Hard to project that in May right now.
Yeah. Styles definitely make fights when it comes to March Madness. So we'll get a better read on that as we get a little bit closer. Adam, just wanted to take a quick time out and thank you for spending some time with us. You've certainly left me feeling more enlightened about this offseason and the season to come for this program. Everyone out there watching and listening, get over to Twitter. You can follow Adam there at Adam Jardy, and you can always check out all of his great work with the Columbus Dispatch. Adam, thank you again for making some time for us.
Yeah, it's anytime during the offseason I can find a reason to talk Ohio State basketball. I am all about it. So I appreciate you guys having me on, and it was great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Adam.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll find a chance to do it again as we get a little bit closer to tip-off.
That sounds good.
Thanks, Adam. All right. So as we alluded to off the top, another busy couple of days in terms of the transfer portal and top players making their decision where they want to head. We actually had a very big piece of news. Your number 2 ranked player on your big board make his decision here just a few hours ago. Mike, tell us about where he is heading and what impact it has on the team that he decided.
Yeah, so pretty excited last night. I got word that the decision was going to come about 9 a.m. Central from Baylor Shireman. Super exciting player, our number 2 player on our drroto.com big board transfer list here. South Dakota State, your Jackrabbits, right? Put on a show in that first round matchup against Providence. Big Sky Player of the Year decides to another homecoming story here. Decides to head on over to Creighton. And wow, yeah, who would have thought Creighton would be in this position, right? Now we're sitting here looking at Creighton as a potential Final Four, top 5 preseason type team. So this guy can do it all. If you watch any bit of the tournament, man, he's got range. He can drive, good size. He's still testing the NBA waters, right? So, we'll kind of see how that goes. But with all indications, it looks like he's probably coming back after all the hoopla on the decision and everything. Averaged 16 points, almost 8 rebounds, almost 5 assists a game. Super exciting player to watch, man. Just a lot of fun. And, he's gonna join this Creighton team who has our guy that we played a ton in DFS, Ryan Kalkbrenner. The big man, so they're going to have a really good defensive presence, and he's only going to get better on the offensive end. We saw Arthur Kaluma really show out in that Kansas game. He looks like a stud after his freshman year. Trey Alexander looked really good his freshman year, and you got Ryan Nimhart, who, although the injury kind of slowed him down that towards the end of the year, he looks like a really dynamic point guard. So, man, you're looking at this roster here, and it looks pretty good. I think Rothstein has them number 2 just behind UNC right now. Maybe a little overzealous. I'm looking at maybe a 4 to 5 right now. But what are your thoughts on Shireman coming over to Creighton?
Yeah, I mean, on its face, it feels like it's a really strong fit, right? With how well this roster meshed together, especially towards the stretch run of the season last year, it's going to be curious to see what sort of role he takes on, right? I mean, he was certainly a much more prominent player for the Jackrabbits. So one storyline I'll be watching, does he step right in and maintain that kind of primary sort of A guy role for the Blue Jays, or does he maybe kind of fit into the mix a little bit more? So this is something that I'll certainly be watching closely, and hopefully we'll have a little bit better gauge on as we get closer to the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you bring in a player of this caliber, you're probably going to put the ball in his hands, but there's some pretty talented ball handlers. So
guys.
Yeah, they got some dudes now. So for DFS purposes, man, it's going to be expensive right now. He's going to the Big East. The Big East is, man, they're loading up on some players right now. So definitely going to be a really strong conference this coming year. And yeah, you got to look at Creighton as one of the favorites right now, along with the Providence team that's kind of surging in the portal as well. Can't ever count out Villanova. And, even though they lose Jay Wright, they're bringing someone back here that can, obviously knows the system. So Big East looking pretty good. And another Big East team, right, making a splash.
Yeah, absolutely. This entire conference is going to be a ton of fun. We're going to continue to target not only this conference, but this team, St. John's Red Storm, all throughout the DFS season next year. And Coach Mike Anderson picks up at least one of the players that's nearest and dearest to my heart, David Jones, author of one of the best in-game pivots I've ever experienced. Let's tell everyone what the Red Storm's getting as they snag your number 11 transfer.
Yeah, David Jones, right? Near and dear to your heart, man. That's probably going to be your favorite story from last year was that ridiculous game against St. John's where he dropped a ton of fantasy points and he made some money there. But David Jones, man, 14.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, a steal, over a steal and a block a game, right? So, this is a really talented wing type player. He can probably play some small ball 4, which is where Coach Mike Anderson has had a lot of success. And you're looking at St. John's as, one of the favorites here coming into the season. They just grabbed Andre Curbelo a few weeks ago, who's number 19 on our big board. We talked a little bit about him as he was making his decision. And, he at one point was, I believe, right in our top 10 before madness kind of broke out in the portal. But, a very talented player. He's going to obviously be joined by Posh Alexander, another one of our guys that we really like. So you got 3 guys that could legit challenge for all Big East honors, right? So definitely going to help soften the blow of our guy, Jalen Champagny and Aaron Wheeler, who are off to the NBA draft. The thing about, David Jones is, man, he can just kind of do it all, right? He can handle the ball. He's got some outside shooting. He's an above-average defender. He's left-handed. He can get to the paint. Just got to calm down on the fouling. Seems like he had some foul issues. But putting him together with Curbelo and Soriano, guys that he's real close with, this is looking like a really talented team. Any final thoughts on St. John's?
Man, it seems like it's full steam ahead, right? I don't see why Coach Anderson would change his philosophy overall. So St. John's, all of the players, including David Jones on that team, are going to be premium pieces and players that we target all year. And they are going to remain one of the more favorable matchups out there, right? The thing that I think is an interesting thing to discuss. You mentioned upwards of 3 guys that can compete for all conference marks. Maybe in a normal year, but this conference is absolutely stacked, right? So all of a sudden we've got them competing with some of these Power 5 guys in terms of just how much they've armed up in this offseason. So should be a lot of fun to watch as we get closer to tip off.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. A lot of Big East. Can't wait, man. How far are we away? I think November 7th is tip, so a little ways to go. But some more portal madness going on, right? Before we get to that point.
Man, left and right. You mentioned when we were chatting with Adam that we've now passed the May 1st deadline, and as we got near to it, a heap of really talented players all threw their hat in the ring, and most of them are from those mid-majors, right? It seems like it's becoming a trend where, guys that are under-recruited or maybe even have to walk on somewhere in the mid-majors they ball out for a season, and they become the coveted free agents for these Power 5 conference teams. So tell us about those last guys that got in just before the deadline and what their prospects look like as they are deciding where they want to play.
Yeah, so really excited here. You're right. A ton of mid-majors popping in here. Malachi Smith, SoCon Player of the Year. Really strong guard, really lethal scorer. He slots in at number 3 on our final big board here. Yeah, he's going to have interest from all around the country. Is going to be a game changer, as well as Isaiah Mosley, who's coming over from Missouri State into the portal. He slots in at number 4. Man, can really score at all 3 levels. You're probably not. He's testing the NBA waters as well. It seems like he's probably going to come back, play for one of these Power 5 programs, and yeah, he's expected to be, a primetime scorer. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him, play with a little more exposure this year. Hopefully some tournament exposure. These guys are going to be a lot of fun to watch. One guy that we saw that had a lot of tournament exposure was none other than our guy Teddy Allen from New Mexico State. WAC Player of the Year, a crafty scorer. He's an underrated playmaker. We saw what he did against UConn. Just exploded against them, and then you saw Arkansas just throw the house at him. Wouldn't let him do anything in that game. So, yeah, he gets around some other guys that can, play make here. And hey, there's a spot down here in Austin. I think his brother plays down here that I'd like to see him come. But yeah, exciting. These 3 guys. He slots in at number 5. We have number 3 through 5 now on our final top 100 big board, all coming within the last few days here. And 2 guys I'm pretty excited about. I watched a lot of St. Bonaventure. Should have been a tournament team. Had a ton of players. We got 4 of them on our top 100. And we got Osani, which I always ruin his name, right? He's a defensive stalwart. He's the defensive player of the year. And then Kyle Lofton, just a veteran leader, right? Great facilitator. Just the floor general out there. He's going to make a team pretty happy when he steps onto the floor for them. These guys coming in slotted in at, number 13 and number 16 respectively. So, yeah, these guys are, like I said, there's about 20 guys I feel like that could really change the landscape. And there'll be a surprise or 2. We talked about, Tanner Holden, how he kind of transitions from his mid-major from Wright State to Ohio State could have a huge impact on Ohio State's season and whether or not they can challenge for a Big Ten title. So any thoughts on these guys and what it kind of means for these mid-major guys to, kind of take a step forward in competition?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be something interesting to watch, right? I think for most of them, it's fair to hedge expectations a little bit, right? I don't think they're going to be quite as prolific when they are not, far and away the most talented player on their roster. But ultimately, they are being recruited for a very particular reason. So I don't think we're going to see many of them have their role change in a significant way. But I do think that it's fair to hedge expectations for their productivity as they settle into whatever destination that they ultimately decide on. And that actually takes us to our last bit of news and notes. Those are all guys that are still in the portal and yet to make their decision. But we had a handful of other guys that actually decided on where they want to call home for the season to come as we round the calendar page into May. Let's tell us what's going on.
Yeah, Brody's excited about these 3 decisions, man. He decided to join us here in the last few minutes of the show. But yeah, we had a decision from our number 7 player, Morehead State's forward, Johnny Broom. He selected the Auburn Tigers. Man, yeah, this kid is super talented. A lot of these mid-major stars obviously going to get a really nice opportunity here. Average almost 17 points, 10 rebounds, almost 4 blocks a game. And guess who he's going to slot right in for? Our guys, Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler, who are off to the NBA, and guys that were near and dear to our hearts for a big chunk of the season, right? So he's going to step in and fill into one of those roles there. Bruce Pearl, it's going to be interesting to see what he can do with him. A really exciting player, so I'm excited to see what he's going to do in the SEC. Utah Valley forward, Fardaws Amac, he selected Texas Tech, crushing my dreams here as Texas was in the final 3 for him. Really underrated player, really underrated big man, can really shoot, can step out, averaged 19 points and 14 rebounds. He was basically the Oscar Tshiebwe of the mid-majors this year. Yeah, he's going to give Tech a little more of a traditional look, right? We were used to Tech playing kind of this positionless type basketball with not really a true 5-man. He is a 5-man for sure, but he can space the floor. He's a monster rebounder. So, how he transitions into the Big 12 is going to have a significant impact on how that conference plays out this coming year. And then my guy here from UTEP, man, Soli Boom, he went ahead and decided to transfer over to Xavier. Averaged almost 20 points a game. Just a great get by Coach Archie Miller coming in with his first year. With Xavier. He's going to be slotting in with Fremantle and Jack Nungy, who should be one of the more impressive front courts in this Big East. And Adam Kunkel, right, who was super exciting last year, probably going to get a little more opportunity with some graduating players and players headed off to play professionally. So, it's really exciting to see, these guys and pick their new spots and how they're going to fit in. I guess finally, the biggest news of kind of since we last talked was the whole deal going on with Miami, right? And guard Isaiah Wong and the whole deal with Life Wallet. So any thoughts on the NIL and how this is all going to play out here soon?
Man, we could probably do an entire series of episodes on the state of play with NIL and the transfer portal. For those of you that have not been following along at home, Isaiah Wong saw the newly minted contract of his incoming teammate, Nigel Pack, and all of a sudden wanted to get paid more by Life Wallet. So despite being technically a free agent and able to enter the portal, Life Wallet said, nah, you're under contract. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack there. It's super intriguing to watch it all play out. We are very much so in the Wild West. It feels like while it's all technically above board, Miami is certainly zeroing in on some sort of NCAA penalty or sanction based on how they've approached this offseason. But a story to follow, and actually a bit of exciting news. Rody agrees. We're actually going to be welcoming on someone here in the coming weeks to break down everything that's gone on with these Miami Hurricanes, with their NIL partners in Life Wallet, and help us get a better understanding for how all of this has unfolded in the offseason. So stick with us. If you're not already, follow me on Twitter at FantasyNav. Follow Mike over at MCHolland34. We will be sending out updates in terms of that coming conversation. And Mike is continuing to grind away on everything that's happening in this offseason. If your head is spinning from all of the accolades, from all of the statistics and the averages that he has rattled off while we've gone through this fast break of CBB information, the best place to find it all centralized is over at drroto.com. Get over there, get signed up. You'll see all of Mike's work, all of his articles, and his big board that gives you up to the minute details on who's in the portal, who's available, where they're coming from, where they're going, and all of the surrounding stats that are important. If you're watching us on YouTube, please definitely head over and hit that like and subscribe button. It really goes a long way in helping build and support the channel. And the best part of getting signed up over at drroto.com, you do get access to our members only Discord channel. That is where you will find myself, you will find Mike, you will find all of the experts over at drroto.com available to chat with you, to answer your questions, to help remind you on the 500 or so guys that have moved throughout this offseason in college basketball. And ultimately, what we're going to help you do is get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.